Welcome to the second episode of Our Lives in Italy. Today we've got the pleasure of chatting with Valentina Harris. What she doesn't know about Italian food and cooking probably isn't worth knowing. Educated in Italy, Valentina arrived in London from Rome in 1976. She's still a regular face at food festivals in the UK and shares her expertise and love of Italian food by hosting courses and contributes to radio, TV, newspapers and magazines. So make your coffee of choice, grab a snack and settle back as we talk about all things Italian with the wit, the raconteur and original queen of Italian cooking, Valentina Harris. Okay, hello Valentina, thank you for joining me today. How are you today?
Buongiorno, sì, tutto bene, all good.
Yeah, tutto bene here too, grazie mille. Brilliant, well thank you very much for joining us today. Nice to meet you, so even if it's only virtually. No, pleasure's definitely all mine. Obviously, you know, I've grown up sort of watching you, as you can tell by my grey hair. I'm on the older side these days. So I've grown up and watching you on TV and sort of got to know you that way. From what I've read, it probably you could be sort of described as maybe not having a typical childhood. Not wanting to get all Freudian about this, but tell me about your childhood.
Well, well, as you can hear, I don't have an Italian accent. I mean, people who've never met me, but who've read me, or who've never heard me speak, think I'm going to sound like Gino da Campo's mother, and then they're quite surprised when I've actually got this, you know, Radio 4 presenter voice. And in my case, you entirely have to blame the parents, Craig. My darling, resistance-fighting, fake document printing, gun-running mother met my fine, upstanding British Army officer dad at the end of the war in Italy. And they fell madly in love. What can I tell you? It was the most unlikely union. But they fell wildly in love with each other, and they settled in Italy. And my mother caused this massive family scandal by you know, marrying the wrong person, basically. I mean, you know, he was British, he was Protestant, he didn't have any money, and worst of all, you know, he'd been married before and had 2 children. So, you know, there was as far as polite society of the time was concerned, you know, he had absolutely nothing to recommend him.
Yeah,
so
didn't tick all the boxes, perhaps.
No, back then, you know, that really would, you know. So basically, they sort of lived this slightly isolated existence out in the country. First outside Milan, and then they moved to Tuscany, to this old rundown house in Tuscany, and we also lived in Rome because my father had set up a family business at the end of the war, teaching English as a foreign language, and opened the first school in Milan, and then went on and opened lots more around the country. So that you know, that was what the business was. And when I say that was what the business was, I mean, you know, he recruited the teachers, he wrote the books, he edited the books, you know, so practically made the furniture, you know. It was and he was very peripatetic, my father, you know. He always liked to do, you know, so we were never quite sure whether we were going to be in Tuscany or in Rome or in Milan or back in England or, you know, whatever. It was very much like that. I basically grew up between Rome and Tuscany with my parents and all my brothers, and it was an absolutely idyllic and wonderful and very different kind of childhood. Mainly because there was very little formal education, I think. You know, my father, because of his this thing about moving us from A to B all the time, we could never really settle in a school properly. There were tutors, there were that sort of thing. But I think my mother sort of put her foot down when my brothers were in their early teens. I think she'd had enough at that point.
As wives do, yes, definitely.
So my father, in 1952, my father opened St. George's English School in Rome, which is
Okay.
still there to this day. But he opened it because my brothers needed a formal education. And so all these, young recruits from England arrived, these newly qualified teachers arrived from England. And then when my brothers moved on and went to boarding school in England, my father got rid of the school, as was his wont, he sort of, did that. And got bored, moved on.
Yeah,
And
what next?
me, I needed an education now. So at this point, he enlisted the help of my marvellous Aunt Leonora, who had never actually had a formal job in her entire life, and I don't think had ever been to Italy other than to visit for a short holiday. And she was brought out by my dad to set up the junior English school on the Via Piantica in Rome, where for at least the first term I was the only student with my aunt. And again, this coterie of marvellous young graduates from, English teacher training colleges who, couldn't believe their luck that they'd landed this plum job with this mad eccentric, English woman in this beautiful part of Rome on the Via Piantica, in this glorious villa, and the school sort of was created organically, and gradually, obviously more and more students joined, and it became very successful, and a second school was opened up. And that was my upbringing and my education. And these long holidays and long weekends in Tuscany, and then long periods in Rome, and then occasionally it would be right, okay, we're all going over to England, we're going to England, so all pile in the car and come over here, experience some rain, and it was done. Yeah.
Yeah, it sort of it sounds like it got to the stage sometimes where you just opened your eyes in the morning and thought, right, okay, where are we this morning, basically.
That's quite as bad as that, but yeah, it was certainly different, and it was wonderful. And I learned in Tuscany there was a wonderful old guy. Well, he wasn't so old then. But there was a man called Beppino who had been living in amongst the ruins of this house when my parents had taken it over.
Okay.
They took it over in 1947, arrived, so now 47, 48. And he and a group of other Italian soldiers who had become displaced and separated from their platoons, not quite sure still. I mean, you have to remember, it's very difficult when you try and explain this to people who don't understand what life was like before mass communication.
Yeah, exactly.
These days you'd get a tweet. But then, for people to know who was actually in charge in the very rural parts of the country, it took a long time,
Yeah.
They still weren't very sure whether they were supposed to be Heil Hitlering or saluting,
Yeah, it's sort of just like, it's, as you said, it's like the story of the Japanese soldier who remained up a tree in the jungle somewhere in Japan for about 30 years and wouldn't believe people when they came to sort of tell him that the war was over.
Yes.
As you probably know, eventually they found the corporal in his regiment, and it was only then that he was sort of talked down from the tree and then surrendered.
It wasn't quite as bad as that, but he and his mates had lived there for a while. So my parents turned up, and my dad, who was originally from Sheffield, went into this, when I say he was originally from Sheffield, he was actually Dutch-Irish, but that's a whole other story. And he sort of went into, an Englishman's home is his castle kind of mode, and threw them all out, but kept Beppino on.
Okay.
And Beppino was the greatest influence on my career of all, because Beppino he'd been a chef before the war. I completely adored this man and followed him around the whole time. And he taught me about growing things and planting things and harvesting things and how to make wine and how to make grappa, which he was very good at. And
surprisingly.
keeping chickens, keeping rabbits, cooking, all sorts of incredible skills. And I learned them from him from a very, very early age. And he was my leading light. I don't think I'd be doing what I'm doing now and have done for the whole of my career were it not for him.
Yeah, because I think, as you said, it's a case of, as you said, you had him as your guiding light and your sort of teacher for these sort of things. One of the things I've noticed here in Italy is that, the connection that families have to their food. Food is, one of the religions over here.
Oh my goodness, absolutely.
Yeah. So
I mean, you might imagine as a visitor to Italy that all those really intense conversations that people are having on their mobile phones are about important stuff. Well, it is important stuff, but it's actually about food.
Yeah.
And they're talking about food, which is very, very important. But you might imagine that, they're sort of planning world domination from the, I was stuck on a beach in Calabria, actually, a couple of summers ago when it was still possible to be there. On a very, very hot July day, I was stuck on the beach, dying to run down the sand and throw myself in the sea. I was so hot. And I was surrounded by 5 families, and they were all having, sort of a couple of meters away from me in all directions on the beach, under their beach umbrellas. And they were all discussing separate recipes.
Yeah.
And where cooking things, and I had to hear the end of all of the. I was, recording them in my head, and I had to hear the end of all the recipes before I could get up, and I nearly melted on the sand. Boys to go, but I had to hear the end, the final bit of the technique. So yeah, you're absolutely right. It is, more than a religion.
Yeah, it's you see everybody. I mean, thankfully now the beaches have reopened here, so we can go down to the beach. But you see them, you can see them looking at their watch, and then 12 o'clock, completely deserted. You look up from your sunbed, and you're the only person on the beach.
Mad dogs and Englishmen.
Exactly. My wife sat there going, "We've paid for the sunbed. We're going to use it." It's like, no. It's like, no.
Oh, that's so English.
But maybe my body hasn't sort of got into Italian yet. Can't appreciate the heat. But one thing that has turned Italian is my stomach. When it gets to 12 o'clock, it rumbles and tells me that it's lunchtime.
Yeah.
So I mean, obviously, we said as well that these Italians have this connection with food. Do you think that perhaps in England we've sort of lost that connection with where our food comes from?
I think it's coming back. And I think what's interesting to me is that people here are talking about this, the importance of your local food, and the importance of the seasonality of food, and the importance of the producers and all of this, as if they just discovered it, and it's quite entertaining to me. Yeah, it's so obvious to anybody who has spent any time in Italy or who has grown up in Italy with the way we think about food and the way our food philosophy is, that it's quite it's happening over here. It's happening. It's going to take time. It needs to be a lot cheaper.
Yes.
It's all very well to say, you can buy English-made charcuterie made here from, British-raised pork and blah, blah, blah. But, if it's 5 times the price of a packet of prosciutto di Parma, then, mind you, now that we're in the post-Brexit horror, who knows what's going to happen with the prices, in the months and years to come.
Yeah, I mean,
so maybe it'll all balance out after all. But yes, there is definitely a strong resurgence of the respect and understanding for the food of one's country, and and as you say, food as being something much more than just something that you have to do because it nourishes you and it keeps you going.
Yeah, I think maybe that may be just one of the maybe only positives that sort of come out of the pandemic, is that people maybe have taken time to take a step back, look at their lives a little bit, and hopefully start to realize sort of what's important to them and what's just peripheral stuff, what's luxuries that maybe they don't need, perhaps.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
absolutely. And people have been forced to spend more time cooking, at home cooking. And that can get boring if you don't use a little imagination.
You can't have sort of fish and chips every night. I mean,
No.
one of the things that did make me laugh when I saw it on the British news was that, that in the supermarkets there was this panic buying of toilet rolls.
Did that not happen in Italy then?
No, surprisingly, the things that were out of surprisingly the things that were out of stock in Italy were anything to make minestrone with,
Right.
and fresh yeast.
Right. Yes.
When the pandemic hit, that was it. You couldn't get those for love nor money.
Yeah.
So,
I was very amused by the obsession with making sourdough that happened over here. I mean, I write a monthly piece for an online magazine, and I did write a piece about how you didn't have to make sourdough. It wasn't compulsory, but if you wanted to, by all means. It became really quite kind of like obsessive, this thing of, everybody making sourdough and posting pictures of it and everything.
I think it's, as you said, sort of like the hipster tag that's attached to it as well. I think, like I said to
That's the trouble. That's the trouble. There's no hipster tag attached to all of this in Italy, you see.
Yeah. It's just
proper food, if you like, to real authentic, it's just as it should be. Yeah. Whereas, as you say, in the UK, it often just gets this hipster tag, and people. I mean, I've had the most extraordinary conversations with people about, things like their opinion of the difference between buffalo mozzarella and fior di latte, and I think, you know what?
It's like, let's have some perspective about this. Really.
Yes. Please let's.
I don't know. It's
food bags. There are people who are very hungry. Please let's keep this all in perspective.
Yeah. And I think probably sort of social media might be to blame for a bit, because maybe the sourdough that's come out of the bread basket is a little bit more Instagrammable, rather than maybe just a tin loaf that you've made, for example, out of just flour, yeast and water. So it's maybe some people pushing followers. But if at the end of the day it helps people to reconnect, that can only be a good thing.
Of course.
But as you said, maybe with a dose of a reality check as well, as well.
You really, yes, absolutely. And, that's one of the beautiful things I find always about, particularly being in a region like Calabria, because it is so real. There is nothing, basically. Yeah. It's a very poor region, but it's full, it's bursting with generosity. Yeah. And, those marvelous vindulare at the side of the road selling just a few tomatoes and a few courgettes from their little patch of land. It's just blissful.
Yeah.
And they taste 1,000 times better than anything I've ever tasted at any of the, from Borough Market or Waitrose or anything. It's a completely different thing, and it's cost me less than €2.
Yeah. As you said, it's great because you can hear first the burst of the Ape's engine as it struggles up the hill.
Yes.
And then whatever Calabrian folk music of choice they've decided that they're going to play for the day. So it's that, right? Okay, Lisa, time for us to get our veg, I think, possibly.
Yes.
So have you travelled in Calabria extensively then? Because I mean.
Quite a bit. With my original BBC series, we based ourselves, when we did Calabria as part of the regional Italian series, we based ourselves in Reggio. Okay. And we did...
Just down the road from me then.
Yes, which is an absolutely beautiful city. If people haven't been, it's one of those beautiful forgotten places. People always go back to, Florence, Rome, Venice. But, all these fantastic, these jewels.
Yeah.
And I think Reggio Calabria really is one of those. It's a beautiful, beautiful city.
Yeah, I mean, as you said, I think people when they visit Italy, they just sort of, think maybe they're one of the olden gentries doing the grand tour. So maybe, as you said, tick off Florence, Rome, and Venice and things like that, and then move on. But sorry, you were telling me about Calabria. Sorry.
So I know it's a little, not very much, but I have wonderful images of it in my mind. And then, as I say, I know that strip of coast along La Mezzia Terme, Tropea, and all along there to what's the name of that little town with the castle at the other end? Begins with an A. On the way to Cosenza.
Anamattea, possibly.
Anamattea, yes. Oh, fantastic!
It's beautiful. Did you ever get to Schiller on your visits?
I've not ever been to Schiller yet. No.
Okay. If you do get the chance to come back over again, Schiller, which is just down the coast from Tropea, so it's on the way to Reggio. Beautiful little, beautiful town, coastline town. It's got a castle suspended on a rock in the centre of the sea. And then when you go under the underpass, which has got the railway line on top, you then walk into what was the olden fishing village as well. And it's called the Venice of the South because if you go on top of the hill, because it's got all the little alleyways leading down to the sea, it looks like sort of dried up canals that are going down.
Just beautiful.
Yeah, it's absolutely
beautiful. It is. So, and fear not, I shall be back. A big piece of my heart is there. I've given it to Calabria, and I will be back because I just I love the fact that it's not crowded, that it's not super trendy, that the food is fantastic, the wine is delicious.
Oh God,
yes. And the sea is just gorgeous, just so wonderful.
It's nicknamed the Violet Coast because you can see when you just sort of approach the sea, it's crystal clear and absolutely gorgeous. But I completely agree with you about the food and the wine down here as well, because people warned me in the north of Italy. It's like don't go down to Calabria, there'll be beasties there, that sort of thing. But yeah, on my blog, part of the thing on my blog is banging the drum for Calabria because it's forgotten by, most English tourists. But the food down here is magnificent, incredibly cheap as well.
Incredible.
Yeah, absolutely.
Incredible.
Yeah, and because I lived for a bit in Asia as well, I like the fact that there's more. It's spicier down here as well.
There's more chili. Do you like that? I have several families that I visit down there, friends that I visit, and I love that ritual of that they all seem to have of going via the chili bush on the way to the table, picking their chilies that they're going to add to their food, and then they use their side plate, like what would be your bread roll plate, topping up their chili individually to add to their food as they're eating. I find that completely so charming.
It's gorgeous.
And the Calabrian chili is quite different to any chili from anywhere else. It's not as hot as some, but it's got real intensity of flavour. That lovely triangular shape. I'm crazy about it.
Yeah, it's as you said, it's got longevity as well to it as well. Whereas most chilies sort of burn out after a little while. That lingers around for a long time.
Yeah.
Because I came across that tradition the first time I had Stoccofisa here.
Oh yes.
Yeah, and they said, "Oh, do you like it? Do you like it picante?" It's like, well, yeah, I do. And so it came, and then the plate was put down in front of me, and I thought, just looks like a normal fish stew to me. And then, as you said, the side plate with chilies then arrived, so that so you can just add to it as well. Talking about the wine as well, again, completely agree with you on that one. We've been lucky enough to make friends with a local wine producer as well. Sort of 20 minutes drive just up into the.
I saw the pictures on your site.
Yeah. He's
That's fantastic. I just wanted to be there immediately.
But if you do come back over, Valentina, I'll send you his details, because he's an absolutely brilliant guy. Nino, went there just to pick up some wine, and then 6 hours later, eventually it was like, no, Nino, we have to go now.
We can't have any more food.
Yeah, we can't.
Wine.
Yeah, and it's getting dark, and really we don't want to be driving down the mountainside.
No.
Yeah, sort of meeting an Ape or somebody with a Fiat Uno 4x4 on the way back up. But
yes, exactly. With 8 people in it. Yes,
it was great. But just sort of moving on from your childhood, then, Valentina. So I think you can be described as sort of one of the trailblazers for Italian food in England.
Can I tell you the moment when I realised I was?
Go on, yeah.
So the series was on the BBC. The book was at #1. It was all going on for me. The series was on Monday nights, primetime Monday nights, and then repeated again on a Wednesday.
Okay.
So it was really happening for me. So there I am. It's a weekday evening, and I'm in London, and I'm on my way to have dinner with some friends. And on the way, I suddenly remembered that I'd promised I would make pudding.
Okay.
I didn't have any ingredients, so I screeched into a Tesco store.
Okay.
As I'm running, I'm thinking, what am I going to cook? What am I need? I'll make some form of tiramisu. I need some mascarpone. You can always do something with mascarpone. And so I ran to the cheese section, and the mascarpone section was completely empty. So I panicked, and I thought, I'm rethinking now, thinking, maybe something with ricotta, I don't know. Anyway, I noticed an assistant, so I walked over to her and I said, excuse me, do you happen to know if you've got any more mascarpone in the back? Because I need some, and there's none on the shelf. She exploded. She said, it's that, she didn't know who I was, she didn't recognize me. She said, it's that bloody woman on the television. Ever since she's been on the television, people in here wanting mascarpone, more mascarpone. You've no idea. Mozzarella, Parma. I mean, that's all they want. It's all because of that bloody woman on the television. And I just thought, right, that's it. I've arrived. This is my moment in Tesco.
Oh god! So Delia wasn't the first. You were the trailblazer as far as that was concerned.
As far as that woman was concerned, anyway.
What was Italian food like in Britain when you were growing up? Because obviously we still have the crimes against Italian food, like putting cream in.
Yes, I'm lucky enough not to be living here. I arrived when I was sort of 18. More or less, and then spent many years drifting back and forth, until I had children, and that's what settled me here. And now I'm a grandmother. I'm even more settled here, I suppose. But before then, I was sort of able to flit back and forth a bit more freely. So during my growing up years, I would visit for brief periods of time. And what I remember about Italian food then was that there was a lot of something called pollo sorpresa, which remains a total surprise to me, because I've never actually come across it in Italy anywhere, certainly not in the interpretation that it was presented to me in Italy. I remember phoning my mother in a complete panic because somebody had very kindly served me a plate of toast with pasta from a tin poured on top.
Oh my God.
Spaghetti on toast. And I remember phoning my mother in an absolute panic, asking her, what did she think of this? It was pretty horrific. It was, there was a lot of cream on everything.
Yeah.
Which was so, bizarre to me. I mean, yes, we do have dishes with pasta and cream in Italy, but they're very few and far between. And they're for very special occasions, perché la panna fa male.
Yeah, exactly. But it's sort of more of a, well, as maybe a huge generalisation, but more sort of a French thing to chuck cream at a dish, maybe.
It's just a very easy way to cover up cooking that's not very good, actually. Throw some cream on it and it'll be edible, sort of thing. Is bad. So yeah, it was pretty bad. You had to really struggle to find some, something that you could actually recognize as being authentically Italian. Really, I mean, Lina's was there, Camisa was. So if you went into Soho, you could find these old Italian delis that were stocking the ingredients, and then it was a question of doing it yourself, really.
Yeah.
But gradually, I think the trouble was that the original restaurateurs, had to cook to fit the British demands and the British palate,
Yes, yeah, obviously.
And the British palate wasn't ready for pesto. It wasn't, it wasn't ready. Wasn't ready for Nduja. It wasn't ready for lots of things. Somehow they needed to travel more. British people needed to travel more and go out and experience eating proper linguine ai frutti di mare, but on the beach in Lerici or something, rather than in the middle of Manchester. And it's a big difference, And then they would come back and demand those changes be made because a good restaurateur will always listen to his customer and will, realize that something's changing and that something is being asked for and act accordingly. And then, it sort of began to change, and it's been incredibly fast.
Yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, I landed here in the late 70s, and look at it now.
Yeah, as you said, a complete sea change,
Totally. And, that is what Italy is really, that is something that Italy can rightfully be incredibly proud of. It's its ability to just make these changes and adapt and rise to the occasion in such an amazing way.
I mean, you sort of have the flip side as well. I mean, you probably do the same thing when you travel. But if I'm visiting anywhere in Italy, if I go into the big cities and I pass by a cafe or a restaurant that has a tourist menu, I give it a wide berth. But I remember when I was living up north in Italy, going into a restaurant in Bologna with this really extensive menu. And me and my wife were sort of listening into this English couple really sort of being sort of frantically whispering to each other next door. And I could hear them call the waiter over and sort of say to him, sort of like looking through this, and he was sort of saying to the waiter, saying, "Oh, you don't have any spaghetti bolognese on your menu." He said, we're in Bologna. You don't have any spaghetti bolognese. He says, "Oh, well, yeah. So, but, would Sir like to have the tagliatelle alla ragu instead?"
Yes.
And he went, no, I definitely want spaghetti bolognese. So eventually, I took pity on him and just sort of went over and said, "Look, this is English. That's the English interpretation of tagliatelle alla ragu. This is the actual traditional dish. Try it, you'll like it." And then, bless his cotton socks, he thanked me afterwards. He said he really, really liked it. So yeah, it's maybe thinking about sort of, as I said, sort of, getting the trends over to England, then improving Italian food as well. So
I mean, one of the ones that always springs to mind for me in that way, that in terms of trends, is balsamic. When I was training as a chef in Rome as a youngster, in Rome we had heard of balsamic, but it was those weird people up in Modena, and everybody else, it was still a laxative, because that's what it was used for, as a laxative. You bought it at the chemist, and for us youngsters, it was, hilariously funny that those strange people in Modena put laxative on their salad. You can imagine, But but then look what happened.
Yeah, it's a
Somebody
explode.
discovered it,
Yeah.
and you know, Italy ran with it, and now it's on crisps. It's probably in ice cream. It's
Yeah. It
this
was,
sort of global phenomenon, and more power to them, frankly.
yeah, yeah. It's sort of got to the stage now as well, sort of with balsamic vinegar, where people are maybe getting the hipster tag with that as well, sort of trying to buy their balsamic by the provenance of the mother yeast in it as well. So,
Yeah,
but as you said about balsamic, it's, you go into the supermarkets in England now and you can sort of see rows upon rows of Italian ingredients.
yeah.
I remember my daughter ringing me up from England, where I told her, she said, right, okay, for this recipe, you'll need some balsamic vinegar. And she said, right, call me frantically from the supermarket. She said to me, which vinegar should I get? I said, just look, it says balsamic vinegar on the label. She said, yeah, but which one? I said, just look on the label, it's balsamic. She said, no, there's 20 different bottles here with balsamic on. So when it sort of hits the supermarkets in that sort of, way, you really know that sort of the trend has hit.
Yeah.
I mean, you mentioned as well, so just going back a bit, Valentina, you said sort of, it's people, had to learn how to cook the Italian food in their own home. Obviously, you've done this professionally, but for sort of little minions like me, what do you think sort of the best tip for a home cook, do you think?
With Italian food?
Yes, please. Yeah, if you can. Yeah, Italian food.
Well, Italian food is the don't mess with it school of cookery, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's all about really, honestly, genuinely local seasonal ingredients, the best you can afford at the time, cooked as simply as possible. Really, that's it. It's not really more complicated than that. And that is actually really difficult if you are the kind of person who finds it hard to trust that, and whose hand is quivering towards the other condiments and adding, wanting to add more stuff. You don't need to add more stuff. That's the point about Italian, is that you don't need to add more stuff, as long as the ingredients themselves are really good.
Yeah. And
it's about simplicity. And of all of the many, many years now that I've been teaching people to cook, I was teaching before the pandemic. I was teaching at 9-10 different schools around the country here. Prior to that, I had my own cookery school in Italy for many years, which I absolutely loved. It was, the best thing ever. And teaching people that less is more is actually a lot more difficult than it sounds. You always want to add. What do you mean? I'm just going to serve it like that. Yes, you're just going to serve it like that. You're going to trust, that you've got the cooking time right and you've chosen the right ingredients, and you're just going to let it go.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are exceptions to that. To make a good arancino, for instance, is a very difficult thing.
Mm-hmm.
To make good gnocchi that I don't understand this current trend for frying them. Gnocchi.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense to me. No, you never see it in Italy, so why?
Exactly, why? They have to float like little angel burps. They're little tiny little burps that float up to the surface, and you say a Hail Mary and then take them out.
Yeah.
And they have to be that light, and that's very difficult to achieve if you've never done it before and haven't had some practice. Making fresh pasta is still my most popular cooking class. It's still the one that gets the most people turning up, and people are very surprised by how difficult it is.
Yeah.
And they're very surprised at the difference between a packet of spaghetti, dried pasta, as in durum wheat flour and water, and soft wheat pasta, fresh pasta, containing eggs. And that's what makes the difference.
Because obviously the egg pasta is more north, and the Durham
Yes.
pasta stamp
The
from
egg
the
pasta
south.
is the one you could make by hand at home, and the other one you have to make in a factory. You're never going to achieve that,
Yeah.
making that. And then down south where you are, of course, you have all the strozzaprezzi, strascinati, cavatieri, the orecchiette next door in Puglia that are, something else again.
Yeah.
But I think you personally, and I don't mean this disrespectfully in any way, but personally, I think you need to have the digestion of an Italian southerner to cope with those on the long-term basis, because they are pretty heavy going.
Yes, yeah.
It's very thick. Some of them take 45 minutes to cook, compared to a tagliatella that takes a minute. So you're getting me. It's it's a different thing. I mean, they're delicious and absolutely wonderful, but
yeah, you're definitely given a warning with the cooking time. But it was. I mean, I made the mistake at one point. It wasn't a mistake because it was a really enjoyable afternoon. But I decided that I'd ask one of my Italian friends. I wanted to have an Italian cooking lesson from their nonna, because I've been given a pasta machine as a Christmas present. So I thought, right, now's the time to make pasta. And I have never felt so much like a small child, and since I broke a vase at my mum and dad's house.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything I was doing was completely wrong. Yeah, it was just like, what was absolutely mechanical, that she just does this every day.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, totally.
So it was that point I thought, no, I can't do fresh pasta better than the Italians. I'm just going to, just go and buy it from the local shop, because it's plenty fun. It means I'm not ended up sort of covered head to foot in 00 flour and pasta dough, trying to perfect it as good as the pasta grannies nearby as well.
Yeah. And the other thing I was going to say was, going back to techniques and things, risotto's another one. I mean, I was Beppino, the famous Beppino I mentioned before.
Yeah.
He was a risotto chef at Savini before the war. Savini in the Galleria in Milan. He was the risotto chef there.
I know it very well, yeah.
So I was taught to make risotto by Beppino, the Savini way. And,
oh my God.
And that makes me, I am the risotto queen. I mean, I could bore you for several hours. We could do an entire podcast just on the subject of risotto, because I really can bore you for several hours.
I might take you up on that at some point, but yeah.
Okay, no worries. It's my thing. I think risotto is the sex bomb of Italian cookery. It's so sensual and so sexy and so incredibly versatile. I just think it's a fantastic dish, cooked properly, and that means that you will wait for 20 minutes while somebody makes it.
Yeah, it's not one of these things you can just cook off the hoof as well. It's, as you said, it's just the love and the,
absolutely, the dedication.
Yeah.
It requires the same commitment as making love, frankly.
Yeah.
If you're not in the mood, don't bother, because life is already too full of disappointments.
Yeah, sort of liken it to making bread then. If you're not in the mood to make bread as well, you sort of, you ruin that at the same time. But just cut sort of 2 or 3 other questions just to finish off then, Valentina, just if you've got time. Just, obviously, sort of you love cooking, but everybody has to have a night off at some time. If you could pick your favorite meal when you eat out, what do you think that would be?
Mamma mia. Well, anything at all cooked by either Theo Randall or Giorgio Locatelli.
Oh, Giorgio, bless his cotton socks, and Theo as well.
Both of them absolute, more than heroes for me. They are extraordinary. Theo, perhaps even more so, because how does somebody that English cook that Italian? It just is unbelievable. Most English people who cook Italian food for me, I can tell. There's something about the way in which they've seasoned it, or something about this obsession of adding more stuff that and not this ability not to hold back that I can tell.
Yeah.
Theo, he really does cook like an Italian. So anything at all that they cook. I am mad about seafood.
Mm-hmm.
So anything at all that is connected to the sea and seafood would be incredible. And it has to be pistachio ice cream for dessert.
My soulmate, exactly. One of the things, as I said, down here, the swordfish and the tuna is just magical.
Yeah.
And then as soon as the pistachio gelato appears in my local gelateria, I'm there banging on the windows, just.
Oh, and my starter would have to be something with figs.
Okay.
Figs and ham.
Yeah.
Figs and salami.
Yeah, as you said, something.
No, figs and something.
Yeah.
Oh,
beautiful and simple, as you said before.
Yeah, absolutely.
So thinking about as well, sort of, there's this obsession with kitchen gadgets at the moment. People buying mushroom brushes for some godforsaken reason.
Well, are you going foraging? Are you going to go foraging? A. B.
Yeah.
Do you know what you're foraging for? C. Are you going to kill yourself?
Are you actually going to make your way back again? Because if you don't know what they are, don't touch them with a barge pole. But it was sort of linking in to just thinking about your kitchen at home. What sort of 3 things in your kitchen could you not do without, Valentina? So there could be gadgets, ingredients, machines, anything.
Well, my knife.
Yeah.
Okay. My knife was made for me in Germany. It's German steel in Solingen. It was made to the shape and weight of my hand, to my use. So it's absolutely my knife.
Oh God.
And I would really hate to lose that. My pestle and mortar.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
It's a wooden pestle and mortar that I bought from a street vendor in Cape Town.
Okay.
It brings back fantastic memories of being in South Africa and what an amazing country it is. And it's very good for grinding small amounts of things, because I live alone. So, although I absolutely love cooking for myself, I'm normally cooking in smaller quantities, than I'm used to. And wherever I go in the world, all my life, I've always bought a cooking utensil to bring home to my kitchen. So it can be something big, it can be something small, but it's something to remind me of the place. I don't, it's not a statuette of something. It's actually a working tool. And I have something from India that I've never actually used, because I've never had cause to use it. But it's a Caroline coconut knife.
Okay.
And it's a beautiful ornament. And it's on a stand of mango wood. Ooh. And it's a blade that curls up. So you basically crouch on the ground and bring the coconut to the blade, if you see what I mean.
Oh, okay. Yeah, I get the idea.
And I watched them using it in Kerala, which, by the way, don't ever go to Kerala if you don't like coconut, because, you'll starve. It's quite literally in absolutely everything. I love it, but I travelled with my son. It was my last, long holiday, just à deux, my son and I. And he loathes coconut and had a really rough time on the tour. But anyway, it was 3 weeks long, so he was very thin by the time we got home. But yeah, that's my other thing that I would really hate to lose. But you also have to remember that in the last few years, before all this madness of COVID, I was running the backstage kitchen at lots of big food festivals, looking after chefs and doing their preparation. And so the amount of equipment that I have is quite phenomenal.
Yeah, astronomical. Because you've done courses up at the School of Artisan Food as well at Welbeck.
Yes. That's a beautiful place. Absolutely extraordinary place there. And of course, I teach with my friend Richard Bertinet at his school in Bath. I know that you've spoken to him recently.
Yeah.
And then in Limpsfield at the Limpsfield Cookery School, and at La Cucina Caldesi in London. I mean, yeah.
Yeah. I mean, it's,
hopefully they'll all come back soon.
Fingers crossed. We can
Speriamo tanto.
Exactly. Let's pray to the food gods.
Yes.
I mean, I never got to do one of your courses because I used to live in Nottingham, so obviously the School of Arts and Food was within spitting distance for me. And I used to know Joe, who used to be the director there but that was a few years ago.
Joe Piliero.
That's the gentleman. That's him.
Yes.
Yeah.
Love Joe. Yeah, he's recently left, unfortunately, but for the second time. Yeah. So maybe there'll be a third time. Maybe he'll come back and leave it. I don't know.
Who knows? But as I say, we can only pray to the food gods. But
Indeed.
And on that subject, then, Valentina, sort of final question. So, taking into account our prayers and hopes to the god of COVID and everybody else, what are your plans for this year then?
Well, I was hoping that we were going to have a summer like last year, which in that wonderful sunshine hardly made you miss the Mediterranean at all.
Yeah. Maybe growing webbed feet perhaps in England at the moment, but
this year is just too much, and it's really got me down, I have to say. And I've noticed a lot of people are not as upbeat as they were this time last year, and I'm putting it largely down to the fact that they, the foul weather on top of everything else is really something else. Anyway, so I have a marvelous friend, my ex-sister-in-law in Milan. WhatsApped me the other day, and she said, I really miss you, why did you come to Milan? And she said, better still, I'm going to Greece. Why don't you come and join me there? So within 2 hours, I booked a flight.
Hooray!
And I'm going to fly in. I mean, I'm double vaccinated. It's okay. I can do the quarantine when I come back. So I'm going out to Greece later this month for 10 days or so. It's not Italy, but it's close, and it's the island of Folegandros, which is one of the most popular ones with Italians, and so there's a lot of very good Italian food available.
Okay.
Nearly. And then I'm just sort of waiting for. I've got several book contract ideas out there that I'm waiting to hear back on. And I'm waiting for the cookery schools to, kick back in really and start again.
Yes.
At the moment, I'm writing my my monthly piece for Platinum magazine. I do these other online magazine pieces, and I'm teaching at the few cookery schools that have reopened. Waiting for everybody else to sort of,
like everybody else, sort of kicking your heels and just keeping your fingers crossed.
It'll take time, but hopefully, Yeah. And I was growing a lot of vegetables, but the slugs have had everything in the rain. So
Yeah, it's like the meme on Facebook I've seen before. It's like, it says the anatomy of a slug. It says head, tail, and then in the middle, all my in vegetables, basically.
Exactly. Yeah, that's it. Didn't happen last year. It was hot and sunny and dry. So
I mean,
thank you.
Maybe over here in Italy, maybe it's too hot. We don't suffer from slugs here, so whatever we grow here, it's not decimated by them, but is decimated by the Labrador who lives downstairs.
It's not your Labrador then?
No, it's the Labrador of the people we rent the apartment from.
Okay.
But she's adopted us, bless her cotton sock. She's currently snoring on our tiled floor at the moment, trying to keep out of the heat. Bless her.
Lovely.
Well, thank you very much for your time, Valentina. You've been more than generous with your time.
Thank you, Craig.
No, who knows?
I'm so jealous of where you are.
Well, if you do come back over to Calabria, as I say, our door's open, and I can definitely point you in the right direction of people to see in Calabria as well. And who knows? Oh, who knows? We might have a chat about risotto again at some point.
Anytime.
All right, brilliant. Thank you very much for your time. Thank
Buona
you.
giornata.
Buona
Ciao,
giornata a te. Grazie.
ciao, ciao, ciao.
Thank you to Valentina for being such a wonderful, down-to-earth guest. To be honest, we chatted for so long, I almost had enough for 2 full podcasts. If you like what you've listened to, please do review, comment, and maybe rate us 5 stars to spread the word. Please also subscribe so you get your next podcast the minute it comes out. So, until next time, ciao!